it is light enough for me to carry this around as an everyday camera. Now, I do prefer the X Pro 3 or like a camera like the XT30, and as I speak, an aeroplane is flying overhead, so we are going to stop this right now. All right, let's begin. Hello everyone, and welcome to Confederation Park. I'm here with Camera Girl to do my first impressions of the brand new Sigma 18-50 f2.8 DC-DN contemporary lens. Now, this is not a brand new lens. It's been around for almost a year now in Sony E mount as well as in L mount. But for us Fujifilm X mount shooters, exciting to have another lens in that standard zoom range. And one of the keys to the success of this lens in E mount, but I think more so in Fujifilm X mount, because Sony E mount, the cropped A6000 series cameras, not that popular. Most people go for the full frame A7 series cameras, but for Fujifilm, X mount is going strong, and we kind of need a little bit of competition for Fujifilm. And this lens here is a great kit lens with pro specs. I mean, look at the size of this lens on the X-T4. It makes it almost kind of everyday carry aroundable, which is something I don't typically say with the X-T4. It's not an everyday lens, but I did shoot with this with Camera Girl today as we went for our daily walk. I was out yesterday in Chinatown. Weather was horrible. Today was supposed to be worse, but ended up being nicer. And so my sample images that I'll be posting in this video is not great, but it's enough for me to test this lens, and I will be doing more tests. This is just my first shooting impression. So number one is size and weight. I think that's the main reason why you would get this. It's basically the same size as Fujifilm's XF 18-55 f2.8 to f4, so it's not constant, but f2.8 at 18 is great, but this is 2.8 right throughout the range. And so not only great for videographers, but as well as for stills photographers, because when you're at 50 f2.8, you're not getting the most bokeh-licious shots, but you are getting some bokeh. And so that's something, if you don't want to carry on primes, this 18-50 2.8 is going to be good enough for most people. And in terms of size and weight, basically this lens is smaller and lighter than most Fujifilm's Fujilux lenses. So the 18-1.4, 23-1.4, 33-1.4, it's about the same size. I think slightly longer this lens, but definitely a diameter smaller, 55 mil filter threads in the front. And so you get be able to use all your filters on here. And so having a lens that's a zoom lens, that's 2.8 constant, which is kind of considered like a pro spec lens, but in a size of a kit lens, I think for me as an everyday carry around lens, especially when I'm not working, I think during the day, I'm usually stopped down to f4 to about f8 anyways. And for product photography, talking head, I'm at f5.6 to f8 anyways. So I'm actually considering this lens as a replacement for my current, basically, the lens I use for almost everything. Talking head, overhead, video work, overhead, product photography, as well as like my shoes and cameras, product photography. That's all in the 16 to 80 f4 constant. So to be able to have 18 to 50, I would have been happier if it was 16 to 50, but I'm not going to complain. I think for the size and weight, it's definitely worth it. No OIS in this, and so if you're looking at the Tamron 70 to 70, it's a much larger, much heavier lens. It's kind of a beer can shape. Great as an all-around lens. Great competition to the 16 to 80 f4 from Fujifilm, but I don't think that lens is really a competition for this lens. If you're used to the kit lens size and you don't want to lug around something as big as the 17 to 70, 16 to 80, or even the 16 to 55 f2.8 from Fujifilm, this is a really great option, cheaper than the Fujifilm kit lens, other than when it's paired with the body. And again, size and weight, weather sealed at the mount, but I don't think the weather sealing is as good as Fujifilm's own proprietary weather sealing. But at least at the mount, there's a little rubber gasket and no optical image stabilization. So the X-T4 has it. During the day when you're out and about shooting, like with my X Pro 3, I don't really need OIS anyways, and so if you shoot with the XT30 or an XE4 doesn't have any stabilization, this is still a great lens because you do have that f2.8, and so until it starts getting dark, you get that wider aperture, but as well as you get more light coming in, higher shutter speeds at lower ISOs if you want. And so shooting impressions, the image quality in this lens, it is definitely above the kit lens, which is Fujifilm's XF 18-55 2.8 to f4. It's the best kit lens out there from any manufacturer, but this lens optically is better than that. but how does it compare against the 17-70 Tamron? The Tamron 17-70 is actually a really good lens, and between Fujifilm's own 16-55 f2.8, it was kind of a toss-up. I went with Fujifilm's 16-55 2.8, but just narrowly better than the Tamron. But the Sunstars on the Tamron was fantastic. This lens here, definitely not as good as Tamron's, but for this, again, for the size and weight, I think it's definitely worth it, and it is a notch above Fujifilm's kit lens. So for image quality, super happy with this lens. For the price, $549 US, and for the size and weight, I think the optical quality is very good. If you are a professional, you need a lens like this for your events type photography, even wedding photography, I wouldn't hesitate using this lens. Sharpness in the middle, very sharp. Along the edges, wide open. Could be a tad sharper. F4 by f5.6, it's sharp all across the field, and that's the advantage of it starting at f2.8. In terms of distortion, there is a bit of barrel distortion at the wide end, and you start seeing pin cushioning at about maybe a 28 to 35 mil, and all of this obviously you can correct inside Lightroom. And as well, there is the algorithms in here. Sigma had said that very specific algorithms for the autofocus as well as for fixing aberration, so other optical issues, vignetting and things like that, light fall off, is corrected specifically for Fujifilm. So I'm going to be checking that out on my long-term review. But definitely I can see the chromatic aberration on the out of focus areas. You can see purple fringing on the sort of in the foreground, and you can see green fringing in the background. Another thing I noticed about this is the insane close focus distance. You get so close, you actually hit the lens hood on this. And so I love close focus, and for overhead video work, as well as kind of like street photography and kind of getting close to your subject, I don't need to get 1 inch from the front. It's kind of cool that you can do it, but it's kind of unnecessary. Even at 50 millimeter, the close focus distance is pretty darn good on this lens. So if you like close focus distance, this is great. And the fact that this lens is compact and sort of small this way, that's great. Now for Fujifilm shooters, a couple of negatives. One thing, it's the same as the Tamron, is that it's the front that zooms. For Fujifilm shooters, we're used to the front is focus, behind that is zoom, and behind that is the aperture control. This thing, you have to control the aperture with your dial. So on the X-T4, I have the front here for aperture control. So this is something you have to get used to, as well as the zoom is, face from my direction, it is counterclockwise to zoom out. Or for Fujifilm, you were used to turning the other way. So that took a little bit of getting used to. But again, that's the same as the Tamron. And in terms of looks, I think this is a pretty handsome looking lens, very utilitarian. The front's a little, I don't say ugly, but not the prettiest in the front. It would be nice if they had like all the writings in the top here. I think it'd be cool if they were more bold in the front, but we're nitpicking here. Nice, handsome lens hood here. It is all plastic construction. Sigma says they use some kind of proprietary polycarbonate material that mimics how aluminum behaves when it's under atmospheric, temperature variances, right? So supposedly this is very stable when it's either hot or cold, which is great, but that's something that you'd have to test long term. This is so far just a first impressions, but overall, super happy with this lens. Wait for a Fujilove article. I don't know exactly when that'll be posted. And I'm actually so excited about this lens. I'm probably going to ask Sigma if I could just keep this lens and buy it, because I have been looking to replace my 16-80 f4. Not the sharpest lens. This lens is definitely sharper than my 16-80, but again, I usually stop down the 5.6 f8 anyway, so that part of it's not a big deal. I've never shot the 16-80 as a travel lens or out and about because it's a little bit too big and I don't need that kind of range, but 18-50 basically covers 18, 23, 35, or 33, and select that 56. So it covers all the kind of that Fujilux, the main prime focal lengths that a lot of street photographers and everyday shooters like to shoot, but in a compact package, but of course at f2.8. No OIS, but neither do those prime lenses as well, so that's not a big deal. If you need stabilization, then either use a gimbal if you're shooting video, or get a body that has image stabilization. So that's it. First impressions. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Camera Girl, for helping me with this video. And we will, there's a doggy there. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Sigma Japan, who actually sent me this lens, but thank you for the help of Jack from Sigma USA for making sure that I can get a copy of this. I have more Sigma lenses coming, so looking forward to testing those. And thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. and happy shooting. Click, 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 click.